Los territorios indígenas del Caribe Sur son parte del sitio Patrimonio Mundial de la Humanidad, Reservas de la Cordillera de Talamanca-La Amistad. Gracias a la existencia de 8 territorios indígenas, se mantiene la conectividad biológica y la conservación de más de 128.000 hectáreas de bosque. Estos territorios están habitados por pueblos indígenas, Cabécar y Bribri, los cuales mantienen sus tradiciones culturales y su forma de vida en total respeto por la naturaleza. El territorio indígena Nairi Awari recibe visitantes en 3 comunidades, Siniquichá, Dueri y Tsiobata. Se ofrecen caminatas en senderos, hospedaje en tiendas de acampar, alimentación tradicional y guías acreditados por el ICT.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. That's where I live, by the way. What you're seeing there in the video is pretty much here, where I live. You just get this volume fixed here. Come on now, quit fooling around. Hello, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that's the area where I live, the Talamancas, and I'm as close to the reserves as any non-native is going to live, quite frankly. So, and they have to pass by my house to go to town, right? So if you've been curious about where I live and what it looks like, then that's it. And it's pretty cool to live here. And yeah, so tonight I'm going to try to weave some things together. I've had something on my mind, this idea that, not so much an idea, but I don't want to say a vision. What the hell kind of word am I looking for here? I guess a concept of today's podcast has been floating in and out of my consciousness all day. It's like it's like a dragon, or a unicorn. It's just there, it's not there, it's there, it's not there. It's a real butterfly wing podcast, but I think I can bring it into focus. I got a little bit of support material to help me out. And basically today I want to talk about economics and specifically spiritual economics, because it's a very spiritual thing, economics. And people don't see it that way. But it is. And it always has been. And ancient people, people connected to the earth, they've always connected the economy to the spiritual world. Because everything in the natural world has a spirit associated with it. And those spirits are themselves animated by the Creator. So everything is spiritual. Now, we don't quite understand that anymore. And one of the reasons we don't understand that anymore is between us and the natural world has been placed a man-made sheath, a veil, if you will. It's in some measure magical, and it's in some measure metaphorical, and it is in some measure literal. Magical, metaphorical, and literal, all at the same time. some of you can probably guess what I'm talking about. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about the advanced accounting that's gone on in the world in the last 100 years or so. And I think it's a very appropriate topic, you know. And it's appropriate because the gentleman who was taking over the World Economic Forum, another lizard, it's like Revenge of the Lizard People, that WEF, who was taking over the World Economic Forum from Klaus Schwab. Yeah. So it's Peter Brabeck-Letmathe. And he's the interim chair, but I think that they'll consolidate him. And after over 5 decades of defining the World Economic Forum's mission and global influence, Klaus Schwab has officially stepped down as chairman of the board of trustees, citing his age as he enters his 88th year. So, hang on a sec. So it's 53, 88. I guess he was put in charge of the World Economic Forum at about 32 or 33 years old. 55 years he's been there. That's a long career. Most people, I mean, you get your pension after 20 years in the police or the military or a fire station. Old Klaus, he's been there 55 years. Now, Peter, you'll know this guy to see him. Oh, what the hell, my wife is texting me there. She knows I'm podcasting. This is a very severe looking dude. I think he's like Dutch or of that sort of variant of the Black Star cult. The Dutch have been in it for a long, long time. And, I mean, it goes back to Amsterdam and Sabbatai Levy and Jacob Boehm in Germany. Basically anywhere one of these Kabbalist fucks took a dump. Okay? And fuck them and fuck their Kabbalah. And quite frankly, fuck their God. What are they going to do? I'm getting bolder and bolder. I just don't give a shit. But this guy, he was the head of Nestle. And as a Canadian, we have an issue with Nestle. They were given an extremely sweetheart deal to suck out a lot of water from Canada. And if you're not aware, Canada has like a third of the fresh water in the world. Surface water, lakes and such. We're a water country. I think there's probably more lakes in Canada than any other place in the world. If you like lakes, Canada is the place to be. Nobody can afford cottages anymore, though, because they jacked up the property taxes big time. That's considered a luxury item. And if you want to own a cottage, well, damn it, you better pay for all of the transgender rights in Africa and that special slush fund that Jussie Trudeau had. But I'm not going to lie to you. It looks like we're being, double tagged like Mexican wrestling with these fucktard globalists. Just when you think it might be coming to an end, I don't know. They're saying Mark Carney is going to win the election in Canada. And he's in the same class of fucktardery as Peter Brabeck Letmate. I think that's how you say it. And so there, and you still have a lot of these fucking goofs in Europe, and they don't like us. They don't like their own people. They want to kill the white Christian race, of which I'm a part culturally and according to my bloodline and heritage. And according to the baptismal records at the Vatican, I'm definitely part of that whole culture, right? Which we'll be getting into in a much deeper way as the podcast unfolds. Let me just take a quick break here and see what my wife sent me on WhatsApp. Well, we had a federal election in Costa Rica today for what are called the diputados, which I think means deputies in Spanish. Let me just check that. How do you say deputy in Spanish? Diputada, yeah, exactly. Diputado. I'm just getting so good at guessing these words now. It's amazing. So our guy won. The guy we were backing, my wife. My wife is really big in the political scene in this province. She's a powerhouse here. And it's because everybody respects her. So she basically, these people don't have a clue. So they just come to my wife and they say, how should we vote? And my wife tells them, and they vote that way. And that includes all the natives. My wife carries a few thousand votes with her. And that can swing an election in this province. So I get all kinds of interesting people up here visiting me, like municipal politicians and now federales. This guy's a young guy. He's in his 30s and he's a super nice guy. I liked him anyways. He does a lot of work with the youth. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about this butterfly wing podcast I'm doing tonight on economics. We're going to get to it. And my supporting material. But I suspect this is part of the joy of watching or listening to the Talamanca Review, is just watching me go on these like wild goose chases, right? Or wild pig hunts through the jungle, verbally, narratively. So they came up here about 3 weeks ago and they had a big meeting. Everybody came to my house, about 40 people, the representatives of the Quebecor natives, who you saw in that video at the beginning of today's podcast. And today was the election. That's what my wife was messaging me. The results came in. The guy creamed it, man. So I asked him, I said, look, this is what I said to him 3 weeks ago. I said, are you into politics? He says, well, yeah, I'm running for federal politics. I said, no. I mean, are you into politics? Like, do you follow politics globally? He goes, yeah, as best as I can. I said, well, this fucking banana head Joe Biden bombed the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline, which was sending natural gas from Russia to Germany, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, that totally fucking blew up the Abaca market here, right? And that like all these people, you're asking them for their votes. Most of us are Abaca growers. I've got like 24 hectares in my family, which is about 58 plus 6. That's about 60 acres of Abaca. It's a lot of Abaca, man. And I said, nobody has stepped up for the purchasing of Abaca since Geldfalter, the German company, went under. He said he'd look into it, and he never really did. But I looked into it myself, and the Geldfalter got bought by an American company called Magnera. So I sent them a voice message and an email, and I said, hey, fucktards. I didn't really say that, but I kind of like that, actually. I says, hey, I hear you merged Geldfalter into your operations. Like, who's going to pick up the Abaca market in Costa Rica? Nobody here wants to sell to the Chinese. Are you guys going to get back in this game? And I sent that message and the email, I think, like, I don't know, like 3-4 days ago, and I'm just waiting to hear back. But that's an extra like $25K a year for me, US. You know, I put a lot of money into that Abaca farm. I had 7 more hectares. I started with 7. My father-in-law had when he died. And then I added another 7 hectares. My 3 Nicaraguan brothers planted them. Amazing workers, Nicaraguans. They are to the Central American agricultural economy what the Italians and Portuguese were to construction in the 70s in North America. They're just like the ultimate workers, man. They're like cyborgs. Nobody can do what they do. My son works really hard in construction, and he tried to go and cut Abaca with them. He lasted 1 day. He came back. I thought he was going to die, fall over and die. I said, is it that hard? He goes, yeah, you can't imagine. I said, well, what's so hard about it? He says, what you can't understand, Dad, until you do it for an 8 or a 10-hour day, is how humid it gets in the jungle in the middle of the day, and you're swinging a machete all day, and you're moving around with heavy weight on your shoulders like the trunk of an Abaca plant, and you're going up and down hills, and you just get gassed in a way you can't believe, right? And he said the air is really hot and thick, and it gets hard to breathe. I'm going, wow, that sounds pretty serious. But Nicaraguans, man, they can just do that all day till the cows come home. They're like prize fighters. Anyways, enough of this crazy ramble on, you know. So today we're going to talk about economics, and I'm going to try to explain a lot of things which I think came together today in my consciousness, and I'm going to try to expunge that in this podcast. Now, before I do that, we're going to watch a nice little video I have here. I can't remember how long this is, if it's 8 or 12 minutes, but this is about the Koji people, which is a tribe in Colombia. And they're very similar to the people I live with, the Kebakar, but just watch this.
About 1,000 kilometers north of Bogota, with its high valleys, lies a unique mountain range, the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Reaching 5,800 meters, this pyramid, with its vertiginous slopes, is a land apart. It is the land of an indigenous tribe which has lived here for over 500 years, the Kogis. This is a sacred land which no one enters without an offering.
Anyone who wants to climb the Sierra Nevada must make a spiritual payment, like the Kogis do. It's an exchange. Since we benefit from nature, we must settle our debts in a spiritual way. That is the logic the Kogis use to explain the natural disturbances that befall our planet today. We're taking energy from nature and not paying anything back. Today, we've come to visit Mother Nature. That is no trivial matter. We must cleanse our bodies and minds, washing away any negative thoughts and emotions by unburdening ourselves of them here spiritually. Moreover, we must bring gifts, both thoughts and material gifts, such as money, fruit, and anything we consider to be good and positive. The energy from our thoughts is collected in coca leaves. We present them to Mother Earth through these holes so that she can feed off them. That way, we will be protected as we climb the mountains, and no harm will come to us.
As we go deeper into this wild landscape, we are surprised to come across its inhabitants. The Kogi people are the last remaining descendants of the Tairona, one of the largest pre-Columbian societies on the continent. This mountain is their sanctuary. In their eyes, the Sierra Nevada is the center of the universe, the Mother Earth which dictates the codes of their society. Deforestation has forced the Kogis to take shelter higher up. The climb to their village takes several hours. Central to this community is the Mama, the chief who maintains the social and spiritual order.
We Mamas always consult our God. We ask our God how to communicate with others. We consult our God to find out what to say and do. We communicate with our God through the spirit, Sewa. If bubbles appear in this bowl, the answer is yes. Otherwise, the answer is no. Sewa looks after our planet Earth, our water, our lagoons, our sea. Sewa gives us all that, and we must pay for all that.
During the Spanish conquest in the 16th century, 500,000 Chibchas and Terronas were counted, decimated by fighting and sickness. Only 25,000 descendants of these indigenous tribes remain, reformed into various groups, including the Kogis, of which only 12,000 individuals remain today. Living a secret and isolated existence, the Kogi social structure has remained intact.
I founded the villages of Quinquamero and Tuguaca after I was trained as a Mama. All the children you see here are my grandchildren. I have 12 children, 10 girls and 2 boys. My family, including the grandchildren, has 50 members. The women make bags out of fique and cotton, which they then sell. Weaving these bags is the women's spiritual work. The men's spiritual work is using poporos. These are the tasks that Sewa asks us to carry out.
A porporo is a receptacle which contains a white powder that comes from crushed shells. The men use a stick to take a bit of this powder and mix it with a lump of coca they are chewing. This mixture puts them in a trance. It is a ritual in which all of the men participate.
This house is reserved for men. It's called a nunwe. Men and women live separately. This is where we hold our spiritual meetings. We also initiate boys to the poporo here from the age of 12. In addition, we celebrate girls' passage to adulthood here, when they are ready to get married.
There is no hierarchy in Kogi society. All members of the group are equally important, and no decisions are taken without everyone having a say. Spirituality is very important in the life of Kogis. They favor spiritual things and introduce their children to the mysteries of their religion at a very young age.
To become a Mama, you must be chosen as a baby at the time of your baptism. The chosen few are called Quivis. They are given special training in the knowledge of our ancestors. They must learn to carry out our spiritual rituals, but also to help their community. While they are training, Quivis must live in caves away from the community. They grow up there in total isolation. Gradually, as time passes, the Quivis absorb all this knowledge into their minds and hearts.
Guardan corazón y guardan cabeza.
As farmers of crops and livestock, the Kogis are in tune with nature. They observe individual phenomena and maintain their equilibrium. They try to protect the land and its resources, of which they consider themselves to be the guardians. A good harvest will be interpreted as a sign of gratitude from the land. The use of fertilizers, pesticides or machinery is forbidden. Kogis communicate with nature. They apologize for the spiritual harm they cause it.
We must ask permission for all that we take from nature by sending messages to the forest. To nature, there are certain sacred sites in the forest which no one is allowed to touch. Otherwise, Sewa sends messages because its temple has been destroyed, and it conjures up storms and earthquakes to punish humans. It is because of the bad actions of our brothers that the climate is changing. The winters, the summers, the rains, nothing is normal anymore. Even here, in the jungle, we are affected by these changes. It affects our crops. Now we get a lot of parasites. Before, for example, there were lots of coffee crops in these mountains, but our miner brothers destroyed the forest. They damaged our land, and coffee has completely disappeared from the Sierra Nevada.
Despite entreaties from the state, the Kogi Indians are determined to maintain their autonomy and their isolation from the modern and industrial world.
Wow, that was quite a little documentary. I watched 3 or 4. If you're curious, you can watch more about the Kogi. Just do a search on YouTube for Kogi and you'll find them. Now, I don't know if you picked up a lot of the really important details there, okay? Number 1 is the training of the mana, the chief or the shaman or the spiritual guide for the tribe, despite the fact that it is egalitarian. Everybody holds the same status. It starts at 14. You have to be selected, and that's usually done by the living mana. And they see something, I suspect, in your aura, or they're told in a dream that you're suitable for this. And then from the age of 14 until 28, which if you do the math is 14 years, you live in almost total darkness in a cave. I'll let that sink in for a sec. You live in total darkness for 14 years in a cave. You leave the tribe at 14. You come back at 28. Just let that sink in for a sec. No books. No catechism, like in the Catholic Church. Nothing like becoming a Jesuit, which also takes about 14 years. 14 years of seminary training to be a Jesuit. But that's mainly book study and indoctrination. The manna go into a cave and live in the darkness for 14 years. Alone. I don't know how many more times I can say that. I mean, that's got to be one of the most amazing things I've ever heard in my life. And I stumbled across these guys today, I think probably because I've been talking about these things, being a steward of the earth, land and man, and how the land will speak to you. All these things I've learned in a decade, 8 years on my mountain. And that's with all the stuff I have. You know, that's with the internet and my computers and my TV. But it doesn't matter because I'm here. And this place speaks to you. When you're in a naturally rich place, and I would definitely put the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Colombia in the same category of spiritually amplified earth as the Talamanca Mountains. And if you look at various clusterings of native populations throughout the world, you can generally see a root ancestry in the kinds of agriculture that they do and the kind of architecture that they do. And so in North America, the teepee became popular in the Midwest of the United States. And these were nomadic people, so the teepee can be taken down. The trees that go into making the teepee can be left and new ones can be cut, but you fold up the deer hide that makes the teepee, you pack it on a horse, and it goes with you when you move. When you get up into the Northeast, you see the concept of the longhouse. And this was a very common form of architecture for many tribes in that part of North America. The Ojibwa, the Mohawk, basically the tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy. When you get into Central America, what dominates is the circular structure. So you saw them with the Quebecers and the Bribri, who are the two native groups living in the Talamancas here. You see the circular wood yurt, and the wood slats are vertical, not horizontal. And by the way, they're tied onto a branch structure with vines. There's no nails in the construction of those homes. No nails. No metal whatsoever, actually. And you see that similar circular structure with the Kogi, but they favor an earthen house. So they build adobe structures. And then everybody in this part of the world, like Central and South America, because the Kogi live in Colombia, and that is the first and most northern country in what we call South America. Central America ends with Panama. So basically the dividing line is really this place that they've been talking about in the news as the non-governmental organization NGO staging point for the mass migration to America. And that's the Darien Gap, which separates southern Panama and northern Colombia. So the Kogi don't really live there. They live way up in the mountains and at elevations of about 5,000 meters. Remember, Everest is about 8,000 meters. And it's a very hard life in terms of, I mean, from our perspective, it seems hard. If you're born to it and your body and mind are conditioned to it from a young age, it's just normal. But these people can walk like distances that for us you would have to be a marathon runner to even walk that far. And walk through the conditions they walk through, which is jungle. And the Kogi don't wear shoes, they go barefoot. And all of the clothes that they wear, they stitch together themselves from natural fibers derived from the plants. It's kind of amazing, actually, how autonomous they are. Now, in some of the other documentaries I watched today, they talk a lot about the connection between man and nature, and they define it as an exchange that has to maintain a balance. And if the balance is not maintained, then ill fortune will befall, not just the Kogi, but the whole world. And they referenced it a little bit in that documentary which we watched. How they blame transgressions against nature for earthquakes and crop loss and vermin. Now, if you had told me this 10 years ago, even with all my meditation, I would have thought it was a bit superstitious. But after 8 years of living on this mountain and seeing how my mountain responds to my house guests, to my son's friends, and even to my neighbors and family when they're behaving poorly, there is no doubt in my mind that there are forces in nature which punish human beings. Okay. Now, this is a first and primary spiritual lesson for human beings. Our spirituality begins where our feet rest, which is on the earth. It's a material reality, it's the earth, but the first level of spiritual teaching and the first migration from purely material consciousness comes from interacting with material consciousness. And it comes in the form of what we would call, from our perspective, folklore and tribal anecdotes, which obviously, as a reasoned and scientific and mathematical and philosophical society, we just don't understand that anymore. Try to explain some of these concepts to a philosopher like Stefan Molyneux or somebody like that, and they'll laugh at you. Try to explain these spiritual principles to Ben Shapiro or a rabbi, and they'll laugh at you. Maybe not all the rabbis. I think some of the rabbis know. And what I'm trying to point out here is the full efficacy of money as a form of magic, as a spell which blinds us. Because we are no longer looking at the land as the resource upon which I got to backtrack here. I'm not sure resource is the right word. We no longer look upon the land as the equitable partner that will raise our children, help us raise our children and teach them. The Western world, our relationship with the land is we take and do not give back. I suppose you could say it's changed a little bit. Like, for example, a lot of the logging companies in Canada, they have to pay to reforest, which is a popular summer job for university students is tree planting in Canada. You go and you live in a bush camp for about 10 weeks and you just plant trees every day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And that's reforestation. You plant seedlings. And I suppose you could say that is giving back to the earth. There's no doubt about it. Definitely giving back to the earth. But when you see a mature reforested area, it looks completely different than a naturally occurring forest. It looks like, I don't know, an IKEA forest. They're real trees, but they're planted in perfect rows, and the distance between every tree is the same, front, back, left, right. And there's all these rows, and you can see right away that they were planted. And there's something disconcerting about that. Even though the tree is back, there's something disconcerting about that. Now, the Kogi believe, and I concur, that when you take from nature, you have to give something back. It doesn't necessarily have to be a material offering. It can be a spiritual offering. It can be something as simple as gratitude and reflection. Because nature wants the credit of teaching you. Do you understand? Nature wants the credit of teaching you. Because that's what pleases nature, because it pleases the Creator. And nature is the expression of the Creator, the progeny of the Creator, just as we are an extension of nature. Our body is borrowed from the earth, the same as a tree's body, the same as a jaguar's body, the same as a python's body. All of these organic suits we wear, which are animated spiritually, are drawn from the resources of this earth. And therefore, we are in an economy with the earth. And not recognizing that economy with the earth at the scale of production and resource harvesting we're doing now is a recipe for disaster. And your Catholic priest won't tell you that. Your Protestant minister won't tell you that. Your pastor won't tell you that. They'll tell you that the earth was created to serve man. Man is the favored creature of God, and do as you will with nature. And that's incorrect. And we're reaping the whirlwind now. You reap the wind. You sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. is how it's written in the Bible, and we're reaping the whirlwind now. What if a lot of this climate and forest fires and all of these calamities, now a lot of them are man-made, but I think some of it is legitimate frustration with nature. Nature is frustrated with us, and the elementals, I think, are furious with us. The elementals are a class of spirit that govern the elements: air, earth, fire, water, and space. Now, I think that our relationship with the earth could be rectified with zero-point energy, because zero-point energy is not coming from the earth. It permeates the earth, but you're just sort of drawing it right from space, if you will. And it would allow nature to go on as it does. Now, as I conclude this podcast, which I will call Spiritual Economics, I'm going to conclude with something that is a little bit disturbing. I'm going to pour a coffee. Now, as you saw those manas, the Kogi shaman, who do their 14 years in a cave, they refer to everything lovingly, even the people that cut the forests down. They call them our miner brothers, the people who go into the earth for the metals and stuff. Okay? Actually, the Kogi refer to miner brothers as another class of human being. They are the elder brothers because they have the most direct relationship with nature. But the point is, they're loving and they're unified, and they're probably frustrated with humanity, but they haven't given up yet. Now, I want to cast your mind back to the relationships and the law that govern the Western world, and specifically how our legal system has us on water, not on land. Hence the term Admiralty law. Okay? I want you to consider the birth certificate and the collateralization of your life, either to a religious institution or to a government. Because the birth certificate and its commodification denotes a relationship of dependency. And if the guardian can no longer afford the dependent, the guardian has the lawful right to kill the dependent. I'll let that sink in for a sec, because that's a big point. If the guardian can no longer afford the dependent, the guardian has the right to kill the dependent. Can forfeit the contract of guardianship through death. And we could say that this is a lawful death, because it's all through agreement and consent. Now I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to explain to you the Dutch banker Ronald Bernard and why these rituals, the child-killing rituals, exist in the banking world, which is also a form of it is, the banking world is the high temple of the paper world. And the paper world, the world of contracts and bondage and bonds, is also a form of shamanism, just like the Kogi. Except the shaman or the rabbis running the paper world don't love you. They want you to be stupid. They want you not to understand what they're doing. And when they do these rituals, they're giving back to nature to pay the debt they have with nature for what they've taken from nature. They're not stupid. We're the stupid ones, because it's taken us so long to figure out what they're doing. This is the true spiritual relationship. Those crazy people in America and Canada and Australia who don't pay taxes, free men on the land, sovereign citizens, they kind of understand it intuitively, but they don't have the full spiritual understanding of it. They can't get it. It just escapes them. Okay? They just interpret it biblically. God gave me these rights, I'm going to exercise. Well, you signed a contract, you fucking moron. Okay? And it is a contract. And how do I know that? Because I know people in Canada who have sent by registered courier their birth certificate and all documentation relating to government ID to the Attorney General of their province and another copy to the Attorney General of Canada. And they have signed receipt to prove that these things were sent by a courier company and they were signed for at the offices of the provincial Attorney General and the federal Attorney General. And then those people are officially out of the system. They can drive a vehicle on a highway, get pulled over, and there's nothing the cops can do because they haven't signed the agreements. Now, if anything happens while they're driving, if they destroy a $100,000 car, a BMW, or they kill somebody, then they would be prosecuted under common law, and that would be very, very severe. But absent that, they're free to function and operate in the world as they see fit. It's not the greatest of lives. I know a few people who've done this and have been doing it for 25 years or more. I would say that these people are wiser than most people because they have their original relationship with life back. They're not the dependent of an invisible or an abstracted guardian the way the rest of us are. War and the bloodshed inherent in war and the offering of that blood to the earth is compensation for what these humans take from the earth. Do you understand? All of these religions, however fancy and mysterious they seem, however opaque and confounding voices like Jordan Maxwell make them sound, they're no more complicated than the Kogi system. That's the reality. There's only one economics here. There's only one spirit governing this world, one unified spirit. Only it's the same living membrane we all live in the material reality. And it's the same laws for everybody, whether they understand them or not. So there's your connection. You call it Satanism, call it whatever you want. But they have the lawful right to sacrifice these people because these people are dependents and they can no longer support the dependents based on their contractual obligations to nature. And so they sacrifice the lives ritually and they give them back to nature. And they equitize certain things through the transaction, because there's a lot of ancillary parties to a ritual. There's a lot of low-level demonic energy feeding on a corpse. A corpse will have energy for about 72 hours. There are entire classes of beings that feed on the dying energy of spiritually vacated corpses. And so you can barter with them. It's like an ancillary market for your economy. But the principal reason for the sacrifices is to balance out the way the Kogi describe it. You can't say you weren't told. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.